Hello, welcome back. So now you have seen three major ways of how knowledge bases are constructed, and these are three typical approaches on how you can build them. The first was a community constructed approach, so where people sort of manually build a knowledge base. Freebase was an early example for that, and Wikidata is an ongoing example. Then there are techniques where you build it automatically, sort of semi-automatically. DBpedia is a good example for that. It starts from existing content, in this case, Wikipedia, and builds the knowledge graph. The third option is that you take an existing knowledge source and fully automatically export it. So this is typically done for existing databases, mostly relational databases, but could also be something like spreadsheets, and then use scripts to export them into data graph format, into RDF. So this sort of summarizes these different approaches. You can distinguish between the type of the source data that you have, and there you have either structured data or unstructured data. Unstructured data is something like natural language text. Then, depending on what you have, you want to transform and publish it as a knowledge graph. So there are various tools, for example, to convert CSV files, XML files, and so on. And then you can directly put them into a triple store. One thing I'll show you in a minute is what you can do for exporting a relational database. Essentially, relational databases in our context are interesting in two cases: as a backend for a web interface. And there, very often, you want to have RDF data embedded directly in the web pages. We'll talk about this a bit later on in the next part, structured data on the web. So there are many of the content management systems that you have, WordPress, Drupal, and so on. They have plugins for taking structured content and embedding it into web pages in this RDFA format. What we'll talk about now, so this is what we'll talk about later. What we'll talk about now is how to directly take the data out there and convert it into RDF. Finally, I'll also in the next part give you a brief example on how to deal with natural language text. So we look at one example on how to connect natural language documents with a knowledge graph. And we'll have a few small exercises on the worksheet and then later on in the lab as well. And this summarizes different ways on how you can take your data that you have and create a knowledge graph on the web. Okay, so much for this quick overview. And in the next part, I'll show you one technique for converting relational databases into RDF. See you then.